Joe, can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that you did craft such this realistic story of T'Challa's self-discovery as Black Panther, as T'Challa. Can you and ultimately made Wakanda feel like a very real place? Yep. Can you talk about some of those decisions on how to accomplish those things in the script?
Yeah, I mean, we started from the canon. So we looked at the canon, we saw what was there, but and obviously he was introduced, as Kevin said, in Civil War. But what we wanted to do was to personalize him from our experiences as African Americans. I said that there's a couple things that we talked about a lot that me and Ryan talked about that we shared, and it's this idea of never seeing ourselves as a hero on screen, and the idea of having a disconnect from our heritage and understanding, the question of what it is to be African and African American, and that dialogue between those two things. And so we would sit and have conversations about how that made us feel, how to imbue that within the parameters of the stories the story that we wanted to tell, how to craft the shape of our story to be able to navigate that in a way that is fair and but is that grounded and truthful as well. And so it was a lot of just talking about the characters, talking about how this character sees that dynamic, and when you look at Wakanda, what we tried to do is we tried to pair. There was innovation versus tradition at times. People who wanted things to change and people who really held on to the way it was. And so we tried to take characters and look at them with that paradigm and put them in scenes and situations where we could, in a way, kind of express those perspectives dramatically. And we also did that in a similar way with Killmonger and T'Challa in terms of their perspective and that dialogue between, African and African American.
Kevin, when you first got that first draft of the script, was there anything that particularly excited you about it that you just weren't expecting, or?
It was the first draft was very long, as you recall. It was very, very long, and there were a few subplots that went away. But what was very exciting about it was how rich it was. I mean, it was not just the story of one man. It was not just the story of Black Panther. It was the story of this country. It was the story of the women of this country. It was the story of Shuri, his brilliant sister. And that's what was exciting, was seeing the world building begin on the page that Joe and Ryan were putting together. And there was one line, I think it was in that first draft, one line that remained all the way through the film, and it was Killmonger's last line as he's dying.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful and so strong, and I think we sat down for notes and said, okay, well, we're going to have a lot of notes and a lot to talk about in the big picture, but this line can never change. Yeah. And Ryan said, I thought that was the one note you were going to give, was we have to cut that line. And that was early in the process where he was still, navigating the relationship. But we only wanted to do this movie to do it right and to do it in a very big way.
One thing that should be said is how supportive Kevin was and how supportive Disney was in terms of us making a very personal movie and putting in things like that,
obvious,
and not having to have the conversations of trying to explain why that needs to be in it, but just the support of what that is and trust in what we were doing.